I gotta say, this is awful that Diddy owes his life to Mark Agnello, literally his life, because he could have gotten life in prison were it not for Mark Agnello.
All right, let's talk about the moment the armor cracks. The exact second a person who built an empire on being untouchable realizes they're not. We're talking about Sean Diddy Combs, a name that's synonymous with power, influence, and an almost mythical control over his own narrative. But right now, behind the towering walls of his mansions, behind the forced smiles in those rushed paparazzi shots, there is a raw, suffocating panic, a fear that tastes different. It's not the fear of a setback, it's the fear of the fall. And it all starts with a betrayal. Not from an enemy, from the one person you pay to stand in the fire for you, your lawyer.
So much being said about your client in that trial, obviously in the media, facing a number of different lawsuits. We also wondered whether or not he, and it's his decision alone, whether he wanted to take the stand and give his story, tell his story, give his version of events. Obviously, there are a ton of risks that come with putting a defendant on the stand, but it would be his choice. Was there a conversation about that?
Well, I mean, I can't get into, attorney-client privilege conversations. Obviously he thought about it.
Picture this. It's the lead up to Diddy's trial, the federal case that could have put him away for life. His entire world is on the line. And in his corner, he has Mark Agnello, a defense attorney with a brilliant, ruthless strategy. Agnello's plan? To paint Diddy not as a criminal, but as a successful black man, the system was desperate to tear down a target. 8 months before the trial, he's already spelling it out. They couldn't get into his bank account, so they go into his bedroom, and it worked. The jury heard the noise, the headlines, the chaos, and they acquitted him on all the serious charges.
For sex, and I do want to point out that there's testimony and evidence that there were a number of occasions where the guys didn't end up having sex and they still got paid for their time. There's a bunch of text messages between Sean and people who work for Cowboys for Angels, one of the escort services, where,
Mark Agnello didn't just win a case, he saved Diddy's life from a life sentence. So how does Diddy thank the man who handed him his freedom back? He secretly records him. Think about the sheer staggering betrayal of that. Diddy hires a videographer to chronicle his life during this legal nightmare, and he doesn't tell his own lawyer. So there's Mark Agnello on the phone thinking he's in a protected attorney-client conversation. He's being blunt, he's being real. He's saying things like, "You are screwing this up, we're losing." He's talking to his client not just as a lawyer, but as a guide, trying to steer him through the storm. And the whole time, Diddy has a camera rolling. Agnello is essentially performing for an audience he doesn't know exists. He's being turned into a character in Diddy's own documentary without his consent.
Which, by the way, our guest Serena Townsend had said, hey, listen, I was asking, does any of this affect the judge's decision? In other words, does the judge just come in there, know what he's going to do? Is he persuaded by anything that anybody says in court? It's like, well, if they take a break.
It's a violation of trust so profound, so fundamentally disrespectful, it makes your blood run cold. Why? Why would he do that? The easy answer is control. Diddy has always controlled the narrative. He was planning on using that footage. For what? A documentary to glorify his victory? Blackmail insurance? We don't know. But you don't secretly record the private strategic conversations with your lifeline unless you have a use for it. And this is where the panic starts to seed. Because when you betray the person who knows all your secrets, the person who just proved they can walk you out of hell, you are gambling with the only shield you have left. Fast forward to now. The storm isn't over. It's a hurricane. Civil lawsuits, new allegations, a haunting video of him beating Cassie Ventura in a hotel hallway. And through it all, his legal team was that last line of defense. The people paid to absorb the blows, to craft the denials, to bury what needs burying, until they weren't. The panic became visible when his lawyers started walking away. Not quietly, not with a polite, "we wish him the best."
Father, your work with inner city kids is commendable. There's no doubt that you are devoted to your family. So I think when he was saying those words, Jesse, I think he was really specifically talking about those impact letters and also seeing that 11-minute video about just all the extensive work that Sean Combs has done.
We're talking about a rupture, a shield dropping with a clang, so loud the whole world heard it. When a lawyer trained to navigate the darkest, most disturbing situations publicly states the cases have gone too far, that the darkness is too much, that's not a career move. That's a warning flare. It sends one screaming message: whatever is coming is too big to contain. Let's break down what this panic looks like. You can see it, you can feel it. It's in the stiff, defensive posture in his few public appearances. The jaw clenched so tight it looks like it might crack. It's in the frantic, late-night scrambling meetings that stretch until sunrise, every phone call a potential threat, every knock a disaster. It's the isolation. The inner circle that was once a fortress is now a ghost town. People who built their careers on his favor are now mastering the art of being elsewhere. They're realizing loyalty only lasts as long as the power fueling it, and the fuel is running out. Because here's the thing about empires built on intimidation and secrecy: they're fragile. They work only as long as everyone is afraid of you or afraid for you.
And not even understanding what Agnello's legal theory was, because I will tell you that when we did our first documentary on Diddy, which was 8 months before the trial, Mark Agnello said to me on camera,
once that fear shifts, once people are more afraid of the consequences of staying than the consequences of leaving, the whole structure begins to implode. The lawyer walking away was the first major beam to snap. Now, every move Diddy makes is a desperate fumble. The rushed statements that sound more like pleas, the hollow denials that lack all conviction. He's trying to project control from a house that's actively on fire. And behind the scenes, the panic is strategic. It's a drowning man realizing the lifeboats are gone. He's scrambling to find new lawyers, new PR teams. But the people he's approaching, they're not stupid. They can see a sinking ship from a mile away. They know the difference between a manageable scandal and a catastrophic career-ending implosion. This is the second one. The tactics that build the empire don't work anymore. The intimidation, the threats, the influence. They're bouncing off a wall of subpoenas, sworn testimonies, and video evidence. You can't intimidate a federal investigation. You can't silence a story that's already exploded across a million screens. So now he paces, in those mansions that must feel more like tombs. Every shadow carries the next blow. Every headline is a body shot. The phone doesn't ring with solutions anymore. It rings with problems. And the clock, that legal clock, ticks louder and louder in the silence. The fall of an icon isn't always a single event. Sometimes it's a slow-motion spiral, a cascade of bad choices and burned bridges. The betrayal of Mark Agnello wasn't just a bad look, it was a catastrophic failure of judgment. It showed everyone, especially those in the know, that the man at the center would sacrifice anyone, even his savior, to maintain the illusion of control. And when you show that hand, people stop wanting to sit at your table. So what happens next? The legal battles are just one front. The court of public opinion has already reached a verdict. The whispers have become roars. The stories once buried are now clawing their way into the light, carried by voices that are no longer afraid. The panic you're sensing is the sound of an empire crumbling from the inside out. It's the realization that this time, the storm won't bend. This time, the walls won't hold. This time, the darkness they operated in for so long is finally, terrifyingly, swallowing them whole. The lawyer is gone, the shield is down, all that's left is the figure at the center, waiting for the next knock, listening to the echo of that ticking clock, surrounded by the crumbling remnants of a kingdom they were convinced would last forever. This is Behind the Fame. We don't just report the news, we expose the machinery behind it. If you're not subscribed, you're missing the real story. Hit that button. We're just getting started.